Hello and welcome to E333. I'm your instructor, Gregory Myers. In this video, we're going to take a look at our export custom function. The intention is that we're going to use it to ultimately create the output for our files, in this case, the sample.user that you see on the right side of my screen. To begin with, we are going to declare a temporary variable that I just like to refer to as output, and we're going to initialize it as an empty string. And from there, we're just simply going to go ahead and build our output, much like we've done in our toString methods. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're also going to include the identification tags that come in front of each line. So in this case, we're going to build it in the same order as the sample that I have on the right side of the screen. So we want to have our ID, and appended to that ID then is going to be our this.id. And then the last thing that we want to do is we also want to include then our new line, because it is important that we keep the data in a clean format in this particular case, because otherwise without the new line, then the tag for the second field is going to run into the first. And notice just a quick reminder here that if I use the double quotes around the /n, that I would get that string. Instead, to be able to insert the new line, then we want to use a single set of quotes to indicate the character. Continuing on with this, then we want to then have our first name, and we're going to add to it, sorry about that, the output. We want to add the first name. So I'm keeping the same syntax that I have in my sample.user. So we want to add the this.first name. The last name, and this dot last name. And hopefully at this point you can see the pattern here. The address, city, basically we just do this for all of the fields that we ultimately want to persistently store or display to the user. We could technically use our export custom just as a display as well. In this case, we know that our goal is to ultimately put it into a file. So keeping that file structure then in mind. Which then brings us down to the status. And the status is a little bit different because it is not a string, but rather it is a numerator. And so what we want to do here is we want to specify not just simply a status, but we also want to go ahead and use the toString method here that returns the name of the enumerated constant. Now, there's two schools of thought here. One is that you can store the numeric value in the file and then map it back to the enumerator when you import it. Or you can, for ease of reading it, you can store the name of the enumerator. Either approach is fine. You'll have to document it either way. It just, as you have to be aware of it to know how to handle it then in your importer. And then the last step, of course, here is going to be just simply just return the output. So once again, the goal with this particular function is to create a custom export string that can be used either for file output or for displaying the information about your particular user. As you start adding fields to your user, you would, of course, want to then update your export custom. Hopefully you found this video useful. If you've got any questions or suggestions, don't hesitate to reach out to me.